Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great day today. Welcome to the second episode of my podcast. My name is Tyler Hughes, and this is the Tyler Hughes Podcast, where I like to discuss things about, general musicianship and whether it be music business or music skill or whatever you can do that applies to being a musician in today's digital age. Like to be talking about some concepts that have to do with how you can succeed using the internet and such. But today we are going to talk specifically about how playing multiple instruments can help your overall musicianship. It actually, in fact, helps you more than it hurts you. So, I briefly spoke on this in my last podcast, my first podcast. It was kind of my backstory on why I ended up playing a bass or why I'd play the guitar or any of these instruments. And I just wanted to speak on that to people who might be in a similar situation, people who might be playing more than one instrument, people who like to bounce back and forth. And I want to speak to those who also only play one instrument because they feel like they need to invest all of their time into one instrument to master that instrument, which is a great way to go. But I'm just simply painting a picture that there might be other options for you. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. But first, I'm going to give you a little update on my weekly. I feel like this is a good time to do that. And basically, it's Christmas time. It is Thursday, the week before Christmas, and I've got a lot of downtime right now. I've been hanging out with the kids. I got two kids, in case you didn't know, and a wife. And the plan is we are loading up Monday morning, the 23rd, and we're heading to the land of Ohio, where my wife is from, and we're going to spend Christmas there. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be nice and snowy. I can't wait to throw my 2-year-old in the snow and make a snow angel with her. All those things are going to be great. And yeah, that's going to be fun. It's going to be nice to be in Ohio and release my podcast next Thursday while in Ohio, simply because I've got a lot of out of town work coming up next year in 2025. So I need to go ahead and get in the habit of creating at least my video podcast while I'm on the road. I don't really want to pre-record these because I like doing these in the moment. Like I said, this is Thursday. I woke up this morning, I got my cup of coffee, and then I sat down and created this outline. I had a couple of different options for what I thought I might want to talk about today. But here we are talking about how I think multiple instruments can help you. Another reason that sparked me to want to have this conversation with you guys today is I just locked down a gig I wasn't expecting. Next month in January, I have a 5-night residency playing at the Don Laughlin's Riverside Casino, playing electric guitar for a Blues Brothers tribute artist. I am very excited about this to get the opportunity to not only travel to a place I've never been before. So we'll be flying into Las Vegas, and then the next night we're driving down to Laughlin, Nevada, which is an hour south of Las Vegas. And we'll be staying at the casino and performing some Blues Brothers tunes. As you guys may know, I am very familiar with the Blues Brothers, but I've only ever played it on the bass. But I'm not concerned about that because of the techniques that I've developed and my discipline when it comes to practice and preparing for a performance. I know that I will have no issue sounding great and keeping right up with this gig. So that's another reason what sparked me to have this conversation, because many of you know me as a bass player and a bass player only. And here I am about to play a professional guitar gig. And then also, after I get done recording this podcast, I need to go into the garage and play some drums because I've got a drum gig coming up on this Sunday. So it can be done. You can play multiple instruments and you can do it well. So you just got to figure out a way to apply your time for your practice and then also watch your musicianship carry over. But anyways, I don't want to give away too much. I want to get into this topic. If you watched last week's podcast, some of this is going to sound redundant, but for those who are first time here, I want to talk about my instrument backstory, and I'll keep this brief. But it really all started when I was 3 years old. I came home from a trip to West Virginia to see my grandmother, and in my bedroom was a Casio keyboard that my father had surprised me with. That's where my musical journey began. I mean, my father was an instrument, so I had already, been around music, heard it, but it was when the Casio keyboard was set up in my bedroom, that's when I had the opportunity to be by myself with an instrument and just start learning, exploring, and then become inspired. And I think a Casio keyboard was a great pick for that. Thank you, Dad, because it had obviously many instruments. So it had a piano, you could play drums on it, it had grooves, and it was all in one little music station. And wow, I just thinking about it, I remember it was just fantastic. And I can't wait to get my daughter one, Tulsa. She's going to freak out. She loves playing my piano. And when I take her into Guitar Center, she'll even find the similar type of Casio. I think it's a Yamaha, but she always has to click the little groove button, and then she just starts dancing. She's not playing anything. She just turns on the drums and starts dancing. But that's all you need when you're trying to inspire young ones. So I love that. Carrying on with the backstory. Christmas when I was 5, Mom and Dad surprised me with a electric guitar, and it actually looked a lot like this Fender Stratocaster on the wall right here if you're watching on YouTube. But I think it was called a Stinger Betacaster. It was in cherry red, and it came with a PV Rage amp. Okay, so nothing crazy, but just enough to start getting me inspired. So at this point, I had a piano and a guitar to be inspired by. Nothing really taken seriously with my musical journey. I just was playing for fun. Never aspire to be a professional musician or carry on with it in any kind of way. So it was just for fun. I did know by the time I went to middle school that I wanted to be involved in bands. So I decided to start playing the saxophone. And the simple reason I played the saxophone was just because my father did not play saxophone. He was a trumpet player. So I was like, okay, well, we'll switch it up a little bit, do something different. So I had a little bit of experience with, 3 instruments at this point. But the thing that started eating at me in middle school was there were students playing drums, and I actually, in fact, wanted to play as a percussionist. But the band director, when I came to that school, because I transferred halfway through the year, told me, we don't need any more percussionists. How about a saxophone? I was like, okay, saxophone's great. So saxophone's where we went. And I enjoyed that, but still I was always watching the percussionist thinking to myself, hey, I need to get my hands on some drums because I obviously really, really enjoy that. So naturally, same year, 6th grade for Christmas, I'm 11 years old. My parents asked me what I want for Christmas, and I asked for a drum set, which I got a first act drum set from Toys R Us. Yeah, I thought I was a little old to be shopping at Toys R Us at 11 too, but no, they had a first act drum set, and man, that was amazing. I just remember getting home with that drum set and taking it out of the boxes and setting it up, and the first time that because I had been inspired by drums before, but never had the opportunity to just like with the Casio keyboard, to sit down behind one and no one mess with me and let me just find my way for a second. So having that access to those drums was it was amazing, and I still remember the feeling that I had. I'm trying to keep this brief. So moving on. Now I want to get to my first experience on the bass guitar, which most people know me as a professional bass player, and I will say that I am probably the most refined on the bass. I've made the most money on the bass. I've spent the most money learning how to play the bass with this degree right here. But it was 10th grade. I remember in 10th grade, so we're fast forwarding a little bit. I kept playing saxophone. I was actually in the drum line in high school. But in 10th grade, we had some sort of like fall or winter concert. And I don't know how it happened, but the drumline captains, there was 2, they had a little song they wanted to play for this fall or Christmas concert. I can't remember which it was. I think it was actually Christmas. But it was a song where one of the guys was playing steel pan and the other guy was playing drums, and they needed a bass player. And I had no experience playing bass at once. I haven't touched a bass. I hadn't learned the first thing. But for some reason, because I had one, I guess, and no one else wanted to do it, they let me play the bass. And I just remember knowing so little about the instrument that I didn't even know how to prepare. I mean, they gave me this piece of music and I was supposed to read it and play it. And I mean, my sight reading wasn't that great to begin with at that time. And I never had played the bass before, didn't know the notes on the instrument. So for me to sit there and get through this whole piece was going to be next to impossible. And I remember actually learning like the first note of each measure and then kind of just not playing anything else. Just, I don't even remember what I did. I wish I could find a video of that performance because I bet it was terrible. I remember my band director told me it was not good. And, but nevertheless, that was my first experience. That was on a Epiphone Thunderbird that I had been or using at the time. Sorry, not using. One of my dad's buddies moved out of town, left all of his gear at the house. One of those things was an Epiphone T-Bass, and that's what I took to the gig. I think I plugged it into probably my PV Rage amp. Okay, so you can imagine how that sounded. I didn't know how to play bass, and I was playing through a really tiny little guitar amp. Yeah, okay, so try not to bore you with all this backstory. We're really getting close to the end of this. 16 years old, started driving. That's the first time. Now, keep in mind, my father's a musician. He's a bass player. He's a singer. He's a musical director. Always has been my entire life. But I had not really seen him in his element, you could say. So I remember 16 years old, my dad has a gig playing at a local bar in town. And, I have nothing else to do because I'm 16. So I drove up to that bar and surprised my father and watched the first set. He was playing with a new band, and the guy's name was Drew. Around here, they call him Kid Drew. And I just remember a couple of things. First of all, my dad was way better at the bass than I even knew. And then second of all, in sitting in that room, it was just a trio. It was a guitar, a bass, and drums. I could feel the impact and the groove that my dad had, and I was like, holy crap, that's what bass is supposed to sound like. And I didn't even understand until I felt it right there in person. And that's pretty much what inspired me, or actually that is hands down what inspired me to go home that night. I remember calling my friend Tanner, who was a guitar player, is a guitar player. I was playing guitar, he was playing guitar, I was playing drums. We couldn't ever find a bass player, and I was like, dude, I figured it out. I'm supposed to be a bass player. And it was literally like that. I remember driving into the neighborhood after the gig, calling Tanner saying, I figured it out. I'm supposed to be a bass player. Anyways, that's how I was inspired to take it seriously. Shortly thereafter, I found band Dirty Loops, Henrik Linder, and a guy named Yannick Wisdala. Saw some people taking bass guitar playing to the ultimate level, and that's when I realized, okay, I need to really dive into this. That's what got me to the bass. Now, keep in mind, at this point, I'm playing drums, guitar, saxophone, piano, and bass, and I would say that I don't want to say mediocre, but I'm like intermediate at all of them. I was second chair saxophone player. Justin Trout, he knows he was first. I was sight reading, saxophone music. I took a music theory class in 10th grade, so I understood harmony and all those tough things that come along with Roman numeral analysis and whatnot. Played enough guitar to keep up, I could play Rock You Like a Hurricane. I could play a couple power chords and stuff, just real basic across everything. When it came to the bass guitar, I had spent enough time with the instrument, by the end of high school, where I started realizing how if you practice a few things, you could. Well, I don't want to get ahead. That's kind of the takeaway. So let me continue on with the story. So, 16 years old, playing bass, playing gigs, then decided to go to college for bass. Figured I'd take it to the next level. Enjoyed college, kept playing bass. After that, got a job playing bass at the Bowery. Now, this is where things started kind of filling in for me as like a multi-instrumentalist. So, Bowery is a bar here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that used to host the world famous Alabama, and it's a honky tonk. You play country music. It was my first experience with country music, but it was terrific. I really did enjoy it. I was brought in to play the bass, and that was great. It was a tough gig, 5 hours, no breaks. Now, if you had to pee, you can get off stage and go pee, and then someone will sit there and tell a joke or drink a beer. You could probably get off the stage for about 2 to 3 minutes at a time, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. But it was a very, very tasking gig. It was tough on me, but fortunately I was young, so it didn't hurt too bad. Let me have a sip. But because how difficult the gig was and how many hours were spent in that job, I did have the opportunity to play some drums. So if the drummer wanted a break, I knew some songs on the drums. I got to play the songs on the drums. The other guitar player would grab the bass. And in that moment, I was like, hey, I haven't practiced drums in years, but all of a sudden I can groove and I can keep up because I knew what I expected from a drummer because I was a bass player. So I just remember playing like, oh, I would hate it if I was playing like this, so let's play it like this. And that's the first place where I was like, oh wow. So my musicianship and my knowledge that I've learned on the bass guitar is carrying over to the drums. And I just was excited about that because it had felt like I was accomplishing more than just one thing by, practicing another. So that was inspiring. And then, much to that same note, I decided to bring in the saxophone, and I learned the intro to turn the page and a little solo to go along with it. So now I'm playing saxophone in front of people in a bar. And I'm like, okay, well, I wouldn't consider myself a great saxophone player, but here I am playing saxophone, playing bass, playing drums in front of people and getting paid to do it. So I was like, clearly I'm accomplishing something. I was excited about that. Okay. So I finished up my time at the Bowery, and then I went to Legends in Concert, in 2019, and was brought in as a bass player. And then in 2020, you know what happened? I'm not going to say it because apparently you're not allowed to say it. During that time off, because of what happened in 2020, I was playing more drums, I was playing some bass. And then after all that craziness happened in 21, we were able to return. I came back as the musical director. Essentially, it was a normal year. I did have a saxophone solo playing Bruce Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town for Christmas, and that was very enjoyable. So just playing a little bass, playing a little sax. In 2022, I went under a huge nasal throat surgery that was a long time coming. So I was struggling with sleep apnea, and I was snoring real bad. I was stopping. I was not breathing in my sleep. And this was all noticed by my wife, who in my bed, we were sleeping together, obviously, because she's my wife. And she woke up and would tell me, there's something wrong with you. You stop breathing in your sleep. It's very scary. She would push me awake when I would stop breathing. And basically, we went to the doctor, and the doctor said, no more monkeys jumping. No, I'm just kidding. The doctor said that I needed to get this fixed because my quality of life is going to improve drastically. Just from like a health standpoint, I'm not getting sleep that I needed. Apparently, I was chronically exhausted or whatever, sleep deprived. Didn't even know it. Was nervous though because I had to get uvulectomy, tonsillectomy, a turbinoplasty, I think it was called, and I had 2 deviated septums. So between the nose and the throat, there was just so much work that needed to go on. And I pulled the trigger, and in 22, I got that surgery done. That was a huge thing because pretty much a month after that, when it was all healed up, because I got the surgery done in January. Legend starts back in February. We have a new band that year. This is 22. So we have a new guitar player and a new piano player. Me and the same drummer are still there. We're going through some Blues Brothers, back to the Blues Brothers. And the song we're working on is Give Me Some Lovin'. And I do rehearsals with the band before we bring in the artists. And I was singing through that rehearsal, not really thinking anything of it, just singing the words. And that's when my boss, Trey, came up to me and said, man, you sound great. Your voice has changed from that surgery. And I had suspected that something would change. I didn't think it would be as drastic as it was. So my point with all this is I'm in 2022, I'm 25, 26 years old, 25 years old. I hadn't been doing any singing at all. No singing. However, I had been around singers. I've been watching singers sing. And because of my musicianship, I was able to play catch up real fast. So that's my point. Got my surgery, started singing, was doing well. So I would say at this point, still kind of mediocre at everything else. Pretty good bass player. But anyways, carry on through 22. 2023, I set a goal for myself because my singing was better. I was like, well, I want to sing a whole gig. I want an outside gig, a 3-hour gig. I want to be responsible for the entirety of the music. I want to sing it. I want to play it all by myself. So I booked a solo acoustic gig right here in Myrtle Beach. And I achieved it. I was able to play that whole gig and sing the whole thing without people thinking it was sounded bad. I got compliments from the bar owner, and I was even asked to come back the next week, and I performed that gig for several months. So that was a huge accomplishment, playing that acoustic show. All right, let's fast forward to now this year, 2024. At the beginning of this year, I had my final show at Legends, and then I booked some solo shows this year. I became the drummer for a worship band, my home church, and just now I just told you I just picked up my first lead guitar gig. So that was kind of the front to back where I started. Well, I mean, I really gave you the whole music life story right there, and it's been so far unedited 22 minutes. I know that was long, and I'll try to trim it up a little bit because now we're just getting to how you can apply what I've learned to your life. Essentially, what I learned was how to practice. I learned how to practice. I learned how to prepare. I knew that if I was going to be playing bass on a gig, or playing a saxophone solo, or playing drums on a song, or singing vocals on a song, I knew at the minimum level what was required to pull that off. And because I knew that and I put in the time to prepare for that, I was able to achieve it. And every time, 10 out of 10 times, it takes less time than I was expecting it to take. Let's talk about the two things that you really need to focus on when you're practicing if you want to succeed or accomplish what you're trying to do. Number one, and this is the truth with all instruments, whether it's drums, bass, guitar, piano, or your vocals, is the technical aspect of that instrument. And this one's exciting to know because it doesn't require a lot of getting into a book or spending time, learning something. I can tell you essentially what you need to do on each instrument, and if it's for the technique part of it, and you can just drill that, and then you just drill it over and over again, and you drill it kind of like any other muscle. Like you go and you do bench press. You can only do so many bench press in one day. You're going to sit there and you're going to do your 5 sets of 5, and then your muscles are getting tired and you can't exceed or improve anymore. Therefore, you got to take a break, either come back later that day or come back the next day. And the same is true with the musical instrument. So we're going to talk about the bass first because this is the first instrument that I did it on. Essentially, I knew from the basic part of the bass is that what I'm doing is there's this note I have to play with this finger, and then I pluck it with this finger. That is the most basic what you got to do on the bass. So I wanted to get really good on that, even though my technical ability wasn't advanced. I was like, I want to lay the groundwork so that when I learn more, I'm not slowed down by my fingers not being able to keep up. So I literally started playing mindless exercises. Now, mindless meaning it didn't require me to sit there and focus on the exercise. I would play like 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 1 with alternating fingers, and I would just have the metronome rolling, and I'd be sitting there watching TV, and I would just be drilling that. The same is true with your guitar. You can sit there and just play notes on the guitar and just get the motor running. Make sure that they're communicating. Get that happening first. You don't have to wait to get this happening. Even if you're playing a bunch of nonsense, if you can make that nonsense sound smooth and musical, then when you learn the good stuff, you're going to have all that technical ability right there to help you already. That's the first aspect of the things that I learned, is that you don't have to wait to develop your technique. So, I mean, it's the same with drums. I remember in drumline, we're sitting there for an hour doing diddles, diddle, 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 just for an hour, 120 beats per minute, or whatever the tempo is we're working with that day. And I remember back in those days kind of being like, man, this sucks. I don't want to sit here and just do diddles forever. But now looking back on it, I see why we did that, because if you have the discipline to work on that at that time, then when you get older and you're like, oh, I'm playing drums and I need a little diddle on the tom. Well, you've got that in your in your bag, in your bag of tricks, because you've already been working on that. So technical ability is mindless, and you should be working on that right now. Okay. Number two, and this is the a little bit headier part, but this is the part that gets me excited because it shows me that there is a system and there's something you can learn so that you can develop these techniques. And it's basically what I'm referring to as the mathematics of the instrument. So for every instrument, it's going to have basically a way that it's designed. And if you study the way that it works, you will learn how to use it, like with anything. So for a guitar, it's called the caged system. That's how the fretboard works. That's the mathematics behind the fretboard. And if you learn the cage system and you apply it and you practice it and you get it to memory, you can play that instrument. Same is true with the bass. I don't think there's really a name for it, but similar to the cage system, which is a 5-position system and then it repeats. There's 7 shapes on the bass, and once you know those 7 shapes, the next shape is shape 1, and they repeat. And then you learn about the symmetry of those shapes. So there's a point that you get to where you actually have all the technical ability and the mathematics of the instrument down, and now you're just simply it's like the training wheels are off. It's like, okay, I can physically play it well. I know how it's laid out. So there's nothing holding you back. So now what? I got to learn this Blues Brothers song. Okay. I listen to it. I learn the song. I have all of the abilities that I need to achieve that because I've spent the time working on the technical ability and the mathematics of the instrument. Okay. It's really that simple. So, yeah, I guess that's really a lot of backstory just to get to those two points, which is basically, I'm telling you, don't be afraid to fail. Don't be afraid to switch your instrument. If you're a guitar player and you're interested in the other, don't be afraid to leave one, work on the other, because you're not going to just lose it all. You might lose a little bit of the technical ability, but learning more about the mathematics of a separate instrument and developing your ear to follow that is invaluable. So that's number one thing. Don't be afraid to fail. Change it up. Follow your inspiration. Enjoy what you're doing. So for me, if I would have simply just played Casio piano and never switched, I probably would not be a professional musician. I don't think I would have enjoyed playing the piano enough to bring me here this long if I didn't take hiatuses from instruments and come back to others. And in fact, out of all my instruments, piano is the one I play the least. Um, I just don't think that I would have carried on as long. So if you're someone who plays an instrument, maybe you're a bass player and you want to play guitar, I encourage you to do that. You shouldn't hold yourself back from that because you think that it's going to stifle your progress on the bass. You don't have to be a purist. I'm certainly not. You can allow your musicianship to carry through all the instruments. So, what does that mean for you? Well, it means that you should definitely consider playing another instrument, even if you haven't been inspired to do so. So, let me give you some instrument recommendations. If you are a bass player, I would like to encourage you to play some drums. Give up bass for a little while. Give it up for a year. Switch. I'm betting that if you stop playing the bass and play the drums for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, as long as you want, when you come back to the bass, even if you haven't touched it at all, it might take you a second to warm back up, maybe a week, maybe a day. You are going to be so much better at that bass because you applied your musicianship to another instrument and you were able to continue developing. And plus, all instruments are so different from each other. If you spend the time developing another instrument, you're going to learn skills that you didn't have to develop as much on the bass. I'll give you for instance. So I've spent all this time playing the bass and enjoying the bass, but being the bass player in bands, either you have a drummer or in some instances you have a click track and a drummer, but regardless, realizing that as a bass player, I was responsible for time, but I didn't have as much effect over whether or not the time would drag or speed up. That was really more on the drummer and how he was doing, or the click. So I remember, and I still do this on the drums. I have, it's very hard for me to keep, some tempos I'm better at than others, but by spending time learning how to play at those tempos, when I come back on the bass, my timing on the bass is so much better. I didn't even realize I had time issues until I started playing the drums. So now I'm a better bass player because I spent time playing drums. Okay. Playing the guitar. I've been playing a lot of guitar. So you spend more time trying to be melodic and get more out of the notes on the guitar because that's what you're designed to do, or that's what it's supposed to be doing. And same thing. Now I come back to the bass and I just notice that there's more something in my note. I'm playing this note and it sounds great. Or vice versa. I've been playing bass and I understood about the 7 shapes. So the guitar I've only been really diving into for the past year. And I knew, okay, 2 things. Technical ability. So before I even got started with the cage system, I'm sitting there just playing notes, just getting things feeling right. And then I'm like, okay, if I really want to get this instrument locked down, I've got to learn the cage system. The cage system is the mathematics of the instrument. It's going to allow me to play freely all over this fretboard and understand where I got to go to play the notes that I want to play. It's truly amazing just sitting here thinking about it and talking about it with you, because I've really seen so much progression just by switching the instruments. Now, some things aren't all the same. Playing saxophone isn't really going to help you with your guitar playing so much. It's so technically different, but hell, saxophone will help you with your singing. I remember 2022 after the surgery, so I only played saxophone in the Christmas show, and I played it for that one solo. So, 2 weeks before Christmas, or the Christmas show, which would start in November, I'm taking my saxophone out of the case and I'm getting back into it. And I just remember I'm out of breath. But from all that time spending playing the saxophone and getting my breath back, well, now my singing's like, oh, wow, I'm able to sing and I got a full deep breath of full lungs full of air. I'm burping on this coffee. And that was just really exciting to realize as well. So, again, thank you guys for coming to episode 2 of the podcast. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it. Still learning my way and how I'm going to structure these, but the goal is for them to be unfiltered. I have no script. I woke up this morning and I made this outline for this topic, and I wanted to just kind of speak to you guys and to whoever's listening. And I think this is a great way for me to portray myself and just kind of who I am and how I'm feeling, and talk about some of the things that are going in my mind, kind of like a little video diary, if you will. But I also want it to be beneficial. So my thing that I'm suggesting for you to do, I'm just encouraging you, if you play one instrument, to pick another instrument. It doesn't matter what it is. In fact, I'd like to encourage you to pick an instrument that people aren't playing. We've got instruments that are losing popularity, especially in the bluegrass side of things. We're seeing less and less mandolin players, banjo players, pedal steel. I mean, there's so many great instruments that there's less and less playing, and I'm convinced you could apply the same information to any of those. I have had a little bit of time on the pedal steel, and that's a pretty drastically different instrument, but still, if you know how to do vibrato nicely on a saxophone and a electric guitar, you're going to be able to figure out how to do nice vibrato on a pedal steel pretty, just because you got that ear. And I don't think we should let those instruments die off. If anyone's made it this far, please consider playing mandolin. If you go pick up a mandolin and you just take it seriously for a year or two, you'll probably get plugged in with the community of mandolin players that still exist. And I'm not saying you'll be the greatest, but you might be friends with the greatest mandolin player. So even myself, I haven't really had the opportunity to make great bass player friends other than my father. I did study with Steve Bailey when I was in college, and that was wonderful. However, I don't keep up with Steve Bailey necessarily. He's got a lot of students. He's really busy, Well, that's it, man. I just spoke for, the clock says 36 minutes. I can see now, after doing this, that I probably will keep these podcasts to about 25, 30 minutes. I couldn't see myself rambling on for an hour about anything, but I do appreciate everyone who's here. And thank you for coming to the podcast. And I promise these things are going to get more structured and I will have some more interesting topics. I do plan on having some people to discuss things with in the future. And that's it. So thank you for coming to the podcast. I will talk to you guys next week. Have a great day.